Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Inside Boxing Weekly on the Grueling Truth Radio Network. I am your host, Mike Goodpaster, and right now I want to welcome in my co-host, Jeremiah Preisser.
Good evening, everyone. I want to thank all our listeners for tuning in. Excited to be here. Always excited to be here. Let's talk some boxing, Mike.
Yeah, and actually, this is the first time I've said this in a long time to you, if I ever have this year since we've been doing this show. But there was a lot of really entertaining and interesting fights this weekend.
Yeah, there really was. I mean, if boxing could do this more often, except put some higher quality main events together, sport would be in good condition.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, how many times do you have three significant heavyweight fights in the same weekend, and actually two of them didn't suck? And at least the third one was over so quick it didn't really matter. We'll start off with a fight that, probably the best heavyweight fight of the year. Dillian Whyte, Whyte-Chisora. Whyte won a split decision. What do you think of the fight, and what do you think of the decision?
Well, to get the decision out of the way first, I didn't mind the decision. I thought Whyte edged it. It was close. I just thought I didn't see what the British commentators were getting at in the first few rounds. I had Whyte edged a little bit. But anyways, as for the fight itself, you don't get many heavyweight fights like that anymore. I mean, it was a good scrap. A lot of it was toe-to-toe. I mean, there was a little lateral movement from Whyte, but it was just a good, almost evenly matched scrap. I mean, it's fantastic. And I like the fact that it was on the undercard of the Joshua-Molina. I think it helped build the fight up a little bit. But I would love to see a rematch, honestly.
Yeah, and I mean, also you had the pre-fight stuff. I mean, we had tables thrown and everything else. But the one thing about that is usually over the last 10, 15, 20 years with the heavyweights, when that stuff happened, that was usually better than the fight. They usually go out and hug each other. But these guys actually got out there and fought, and Chisora was in shape, which doesn't happen very often, and Whyte looked solid. Do you think maybe these guys elevated themselves a little bit higher, at least in the public's mind?
Well, I think what they've done is, at least at this juncture, they've at least given some fans some excitement, and I think they will, I think they'll give people a reason to just ask for a rematch. Whether, Chisora is elevated or not, I don't really think so. I think he's still kind of a fringe guy. Whyte, I think he did himself some favors with the win, but, I mean, I want to see a rematch, and I want to see who takes it from there. But, yeah, in terms of status elevation, I don't think much is done, but, in terms of a domestic, high-quality British scrap, yeah.
Well, I would like to see this. David Haye, I would like to see David Haye fight the winner of the rematch to be able to get a title shot, just to make sure that he does have something to offer other than just his name.
No, I think that's a great plan. I mean, I don't want David Haye to get a title shot just on his name alone. Like you said, I mean, really, he hasn't beaten anybody, and even if he starches Tony Bellew, I don't really think that's doing him much favors anyways. I mean, most people think he's going to beat up Bellew.
Well, Bellew's not really a heavyweight.
No, he's not. I mean, he fought Adonis Stevenson in light heavyweight. He looks a little chubby at cruiserweight. It's a mismatch in my opinion, but I think that's a great plan.
Yeah, but I think with David Haye and his management, the only thing they're looking for is mismatches until they get a big money fight.
Yeah, and with his name, he might be able to wait it out, especially with...
Yeah, with his name, every fight he fights over there's a big money fight. Right.
Well, and seeing as how healthy the heavyweight division is over in the UK now, he may well be able to. I mean, Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua, even some good friends guys, Huey Fury. I just hope that he, like you said, he proves himself and earns the shot.
All right, that brings us to the next heavyweight title fight, which was also a good scrap. I watched both these on YouTube, so props to whoever uploaded them immediately after the fights. But we had Joseph Parker from New Zealand beating Andy Ruiz in majority decision. Ruiz is from Mexico. What was your take on the fight and the decision? I didn't score the fight while I watched it, but just from watching it, I took away that I thought Ruiz edged him slightly.
Yeah, and I think most people would agree with you. I don't know. For my part, Ruiz just seemed to be a bit busier. But I don't have a huge problem with the decision. I mean, I don't want to make too much about it being, Parker's.
It was kind of like the Whyte-Chisora fight. I mean, both guys deserved the decision.
Right, yeah, exactly. And even with that fight, I wouldn't mind a rematch. I mean, it's not like Parker, in my opinion, he looks like a good prospect, but is he ready even for an Anthony Joshua at this time? I don't think so. So
is he ready for a Dylan White at this time?
Well, I think that would be a good scrap too, and something I wouldn't mind.
Let's face it. I mean, Andy Ruiz wasn't in the greatest shape in the world.
No, well, for
him, really, from watching those two guys, Jeremiah, I think that there may be more prospect in Andy Ruiz than there is Joseph Parker.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, because in Andy Ruiz's previous fights, honestly, I've never really been impressed. I mean,
I thought he sucked.
Yeah, he struggled with an old-ass Sergey Lihovich, and, guys like Deontay Wilder made, mincemeat out of the guy. So I don't know. I don't know if it's a styles thing. It's hard for me to say. What I do like about Ruiz is he seems to have some toughness. He's got good, quick hands. When he lets them go, there's a little bit of flash there. I mean, his power doesn't seem to be great, but I don't know. It's for me, just like the Whyte-Chisora thing, I wouldn't mind seeing a rematch just so we can settle it and, make things a bit clearer.
Yeah, the next heavyweight title fight, and I'll tell you, I wasn't sure about this guy because you know how heavyweights are. They're knocking everybody out. Everybody thinks they're the next great thing. But I'm really starting to believe Anthony Joshua is. Not that I believe Eric Molina is anything great, but he did give Wilder trouble. I mean, Joshua treated him like he was a junior high cheerleader.
Yeah. Well, I think...
That means he got on him early and just took advantage of him.
Right, yeah, well, I think, in reference to him being a high school cheerleader, I don't know, Molina's attitude kind of looked like a virgin high school cheerleader, and, it was the first time she was about to have sex. I don't know, he just looked timid to me. He didn't throw many punches. In the first round, I thought maybe he was just trying to counterpunch him. He didn't jab much. He looked like he was trying to position himself, but he just didn't do much. I think he threw, 2-3 jabs in the first round, but... I'm still on the fence with Joshua. I mean, he's looking good, and he's beating guys more clearly, in my opinion, than some of the top guys are. I mean, we referenced Wilder in regards to Lihovich, against Molina. Molina did well against Wilder. I mean, he didn't do great, but he looked pretty good. Joshua, I think, to his credit, he's just a bit sharper offensively, whereas Wilder has a tendency to get off balance. He gets sloppy sometimes, opens himself up. Joshua has started to understand the importance of a jab. He set this stuff up better. And his combinations for a big guy is sharp. I mean, I like his technique a lot.
My only question with him is this. What happens when he gets hit on the chin?
Well, and we've seen him get hit on the chin. I mean, when he fought Whyte, I mean, he was stunned, and it took him a while to recover. I mean, he didn't look like he was a, iron chin. He certainly wasn't the next Randall Tex Cobb.
Yeah, that's what I mean, though. I mean, if he fights at Deontay Wilder and gets hit on the beard, what happens? Right,
and from what I've seen, he looks like he'd probably go down. I mean, This is my issue with Joshua. I really like his offense. I mean, for a big guy, again, he's got the jabs, he's got the fundamentals. He's a heavy puncher. I don't think he's a great puncher because very few of them seem to be one-punch type shots. But, I want to see him be put on the defensive, not only take a shot and see how good his chin really is, but how good his defense is. I mean, these guys aren't making him work for it. I mean, he comes forward, and he doesn't move his head at all, really. So I want to see him against a versatile guy like Luis Ortiz, Alexander Povetkin. I want to see somebody who's going to make him work for it. So until I see that, I don't want to make any firm judgments, but he looked really good against Molina. He beat his ass.
Yeah, and Povetkin's the guy I would like to see him and Wilder both fight because I think with Povetkin, if they were to go out and handle Povetkin, I would believe in both of them then.
Oh, I absolutely agree. In my opinion, Povetkin may be at this point, I mean, I know a lot of people wouldn't agree with me, but he might be the best heavyweight, only because I've seen a lot of his fights, and a lot of people underestimate this guy. I mean, his only loss is, a shitty, ugly loss to Vladimir Klitschko, but he's well-rounded. I mean, the guy was he was a gold medalist for a reason. I mean,
he don't fight many bums, and being in the heavyweight division, it's hard to not do.
Right, yeah.
It seems like the guys he fights are guys that can at least defend themselves. I mean, he's
right.
not fighting Prince Charles Martin. Which
right,
I'm not blaming Wilder or Joshua for, because that's who the champion was. You got to go through who the champion is. But I'm just saying, Povetkin, I think, at this stage has just got a lot more experience. He's fought against a lot better fighters, and I think he's technically just more sound. Right,
and honestly, lately he's looked really good. He's been beating the shit out of legit top 10 guys. I mean, he demolished Mike Perez. He had a highlight reel knockout over a number of other guys. I'm hoping he gets a shot, but, I mean, we'll talk more about Povetkin later.
Yep, we definitely will. He's got a fight coming up this weekend. We will go to the HBO part of the crowd, or I think it was HBO, was it? Yeah, that was Crawford-Molina. Charlo was on Showtime. Jamal Charlo knocked out Julian Williams in 5 rounds, which I know you thought it would be close to go to a decision. If I remember right, I said Charlo will knock him out in the 5th round with a vicious uppercut, and you laughed at me. But I think this is by far the best Charlo's looked. I mean, the punch was devastating. I mean, what's your take on Charlo? Do you think any more of him as a fighter now, or you still got questions?
Well, I think if you called a 5th-round knockout by uppercut, I want to know what's going on here. I want to know if you have a DeLorean and you have that sports almanac.
That would be awesome. I'd be rich as hell right now. So, no, I don't.
Well,
we would be doing this show from the beach of the Bahamas.
Well, that's unfortunate then. But
we'd be talking in the coconuts with half-naked women all over the place.
All right. Charlo, for his part, he looked really, really good. I mean, he looked really big, honestly. I mean, I think I don't know how often he's going to be able to boil down to 154 anymore, but he looked really good. I mean, he looked sharp. His technique was good. His counterpunching was solid. I just thought it was a really, really good performance. I mean, his jab was sharp, ended up knocking Williams down with it. And the counter right uppercut to just about finish the contest. They did let him continue, but that was really the punch that ended it. That was just a gorgeous shot. You won't see many uppercuts as good as that.
All right, so where does Charlo go from here, you think?
Well, where I hope that he goes, again, I'll repeat this all the time. I'm not a big proponent of the 154-pound division. He's a big guy. But in terms of, matchmaking that could be done, I wouldn't mind seeing him and Demetrius Andrade get it on. I mean, Andrade's a lot of people think highly of him in terms of skills, but he's not getting the fights he deserves. So him against Charlo, I think that's a good fight. I would personally like to see him against Lara as well, seeing as Trout gave him some trouble. So I wonder what a even better southpaw could do against him. But ultimately, I'd like to see all these guys move up to 160 so Golovkin can have some opponents. But Andrade and Lara, those are the 2 main guys for me.
Well, I think it's only a matter of time before Charlo ends up at 160 anyways.
Oh, yeah, he's big. He's a big guy.
Yeah. That brings us to Abner Mares. Won a close decision. I guess that's what everybody on HBO will tell you. Against Jesus Cuellar. I didn't think that the fight was as close as they did. I thought Mares pretty handily won the fight. What was your take on it?
Yeah, no, I thought it was about an 8-4. I didn't really score it, but that's what I thought it was about. I mean, that's just an estimate. But, yeah, I thought Mares was just the sharper, quicker of the two. And even though Cuellar is probably the heavier puncher, I mean, Mares was the sharper puncher, and he's the only one who scored knockdown with that nice right-hand counter in the 11th round. Mares is a guy that I've always liked, and I'm happy to see him back on top. And seeing as he's under Heyman's rule, I mean, there are a lot of options out there for him. So
what option intrigues you the most for him?
Anybody under the Heyman banner is likely to get the nod. I wouldn't mind seeing him face the Cruz Frampton winner. A matchup with Gary Russell Jr. would be interesting. I think those are the ones that are most likely to be made.
Well, I think what they need to do is have the old Showtime Super 6 tournament for that division.
They really should.
Because everybody you just brought up, I want to see fight each other.
Yeah, I mean, 126 is loaded. I mean, there's a lot of really good fighters, and if Rigondeaux would stop, wasting his time at 122, it would be even better. And honestly, I wish Vasil Lomachenko was able to get fights down there, because I think he'd be the best of the bunch, but there'd still be some intriguing matchups. But yeah, I hope they make it happen, but in boxing, you just never know.
All right, well, brings us to the main event. Guy that's probably a top 5 pound-for-pound fighter, at least top 10 if nothing else. Terrence Crawford with a TKO in the 8th round over Joshua-Molina Jr. Kind of what we expect.
Oh yeah, certainly. I mean, I didn't see anything more than a mismatch. I mean, that's what it was. I mean, I guess I can't be too mad at Crawford if he's just trying to stay busy, stay sharp,
he's coming
whatever.
off a win off Postal, which is a good win. So it's
yeah,
not like he's fighting bums every week.
Right. I mean, that made him the man at 140. So, staying sharp and whatnot. But I just don't like the fight. I mean, there was really nothing intriguing about it. Molina's tough. That's about it. He outboxed Provodnikov. That's not a huge deal in my opinion. But more to the point, I think, is how good Crawford looked. I mean, I don't want to go too far with the comparisons, but he reminds me a bit of Marvin Hagler. I mean, he's a switch hitter. He's quick. He can hit. I mean, he's really a fantastic fighter, and I want to see more of this guy. Really what I want to see is him to go up 147, because, again, I'm not a fan of the super and junior divisions. I'd love to see him at 147 competing with the likes of Thurman, Spence, Brook, on and on.
I like seeing him fight Pacquiao just so we don't have to watch Freddie Roach as much anymore.
Yes, I mean, that's definitely a fight that should happen. I mean, if Bob Arum wants to put on a really big fight at 147 instead of these unnecessary fights that we have been getting, this incestuous matchmaking with Jesse Vargas and Bradley and on and on and on, Crawford and Pacquiao is really the way to go. And I think in terms of pay-per-view, they'd actually do well.
Now, call me crazy here, but I think Mayweather's real lucky Crawford wasn't born a few years earlier. Because I think them fighting at 147, I think Crawford would be a really tough matchup for Mayweather.
Yeah, I mean, Crawford looks pretty special. I do want to see some higher quality names under his belt, but, I mean, yeah, Crawford's a serious threat, and whoever has to take him on, good luck.
All right, that wraps up last week, brings us to the week coming up, which we've got 3 interesting fights. We'll start off heavyweight fight, guy we were talking about, Alexander Povetkin. He'll face Berman-Stiverne. Stiverne's last win was against Derek Rossi. Before that, he'd been beaten by Wilder. Of course, he's got a couple wins over Areola. Povetkin beat Walk, Mike Perez, Carlos Takam, Manuel Char. Of course, he lost the unanimous decision right before that to Vladimir Klitschko. Stiverne got any chance here, other than a puncher's chance?
Yeah, I mean, he's got a chance. I mean, Stiverne's pretty sharp when he's on his A game. I mean, is he, top 5 sharp? No, I don't think so. But
is he going to be in shape? Is the key.
And it's tough to tell. I mean, it's tough to tell with almost any of these heavyweights anymore. Well, to Povetkin's credit, to Vladimir Klitschko's credit, they, and Anthony Joshua's credit, those are guys that seem to show up consistently in shape. Stiverne, it's going to be hard to tell. But if he's not up for this fight, then he might as well call it quits, because this is a fight that will do big things for him. This is a fight that will
he has to either
shot.
win this fight, or if he just is very competitive in this fight, he can get more paydays at least.
Right. Well, I mean, and the WBC, for some stupid reason, has this as an interim heavyweight title. I don't fucking get it. I mean, Povetkin already earned his shot.
Tell me this real quick before we keep talking about this fight.
Sure.
What the hell is an eternal heavyweight champion?
No, it's the interim.
No, they named Vitaly Klitschko the WBC Eternal Heavyweight Champion today.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the alphabet soup organizations, I don't know what the hell they're doing, honestly. That's why I try not to pay much attention to them. But I don't know. Maybe they're just honoring him for his work. I don't know.
So we'll go back to Povetkin and Stiverne. What's your prediction for the fight? And I think they're fighting in Russia, so Stiverne don't win a decision. We know that. But does Povetkin knock him out, or does Stiverne go to distance?
I actually think Povetkin knocks him out. I mean, Stiverne, to me, hasn't seemed highly motivated in recent years. I mean, he's just nothing about him has really spoken to me. Nothing about him has really, made me want to see him again. I mean, he had a decent performance against Wilder. Yeah, I mean, he was outboxed against Wilder. I guess he had health issues, but I don't know. Everybody seems to have health issues.
And the last time he really looked like he wanted to fight to me was the first Areola fight.
Yeah, well, I think
that
the second
Stiverne looked pretty good.
Yeah, I think he looked good in the rematch, too. I mean, he stopped him quick enough, but, I mean, he looked pretty sharp there. His power's pretty good. He takes a good punch. I mean, that's what makes things interesting here. But I think Povetkin takes him out. I think Povetkin is the more motivated of the two. I think he's the more skilled of the two. I think he is the harder hitter of the two. Has the hands. That's about tie. They're both got good toughness, but Povetkin is just the better of the two, in my opinion. I think he stops him late. I think he continues his recent trend of beating up, the good fighters that he's been taking on. I'm going to say TKO probably 9.
Okay, I'm going to totally disagree with you. I'm going to say TKO's him in 8.
Well, all right. I mean,
I nailed it last week with that 5th-round knockout thing. So, all right, now that brings us to a fight that I'm interested in seeing, but not really interested in talking about because I can't pronounce the last name of one of them. We got Alexander Usyk against Thabiso Mchunu. Usyk's 10-0, 9 KOs. I know you like him a lot. You know anything about the guy he's fighting?
Yeah, I've seen Mchunu fight. I mean, he's a pretty quick guy. Is he, special? No. I mean, I think this is just Usyk wanting to get in a defense in the States and kind of broaden his horizons.
Yeah, make a little money and pay for Christmas for his kids.
That's probably all it is.
He's got any, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. I mean, I follow him on social media, but I haven't really seen him even with, I don't even know if he's married or whatnot. Not that I really care, but Mchunu is a pretty good fighter. I mean, if you watch his fight against Makabu, there's actually a pretty entertaining scrap. He ended up getting stopped in the 11th round, but it was pretty good. But is he on Usyk's level? I mean, I've talked about Usyk before. I think he's a special fighter. I think he's the best cruiserweight prospect since Evander Holyfield. He's just well-rounded. I mean, stylistically, he's like Vasil Lomachenko. He's not as slick, not quite as good, but I think his power is a bit better. And when you're that good as a cruiserweight, I don't see anybody beating him at that division. So I'm gonna say that he outboxes him, takes it a bit easy, but stops him in about the 7th round.
All right, I'll agree with you. Close enough. Brings us to the main event. Bernard Hopkins, who's 79 years old, will fight Joe Smith Jr. Hopkins' last fight lost to Kovalev by unanimous decision. Before that, Bibit Shamuv, or whatever the hell his name is. But I'm really bad with names, as you can tell, when they're foreign and not spelled correctly. He also beat Murat, and he also beat Cloud. Joe Smith, I don't think anybody knew much about until he knocked out Fonfara not too long ago. What's your take here? Hopkins going to have a fight on his hands? I think he is. Smith's a big banger. Smith could give him trouble.
Yeah, I mean, damn, it's hard. It's hard to tell. I mean, if Hopkins was even 47 years old, I'd say outboxes the shit out of Smith. I mean, he's been fighting punchers all his life and barely ever had any trouble because, a lot of them don't have the nuance. They don't have the boxing IQ to kind of, match wits with him. They can't fence with him. But in this case, I mean, Hopkins can't keep going on. But then again, I mean, how many times have we said that in the past? But, I mean, I think he's 51, 52. Smith is a big banger. I just don't know. I mean, it's tough for me to analyze this fight because I don't know what Hopkins has left because he looked like shit against Kovalev. I mean, Kovalev, just kept banging away with the jab. But that's kind of the difference. I don't know if Joe Smith can establish that sort of rhythm that Kovalev did. I don't know if he can get out there and jab, throw bombs and keep Hopkins' hands at home. Not that Hopkins, removes them from home all that much, but I'm just having a tough time with this fight. Joe Smith's only big fight is against Fonfara. Hopkins is old as shit. I just don't know.
Yeah, and Fonfara's the guy that's going to stand in front of you and punch with you.
Right. I mean, Fonfara is a tough guy, but he just comes to you and he puts the earmuffs on. Hopkins, even at 50-plus years old, he's going to give you lateral movement. I mean, he's going to, if there's anything that he still has, I mean, he's got some movement, but he conserves energy really well. I mean, he picks his shots nicely. He only, he mentally he's tough. That's one thing I think that helps his fatigue is he's not afraid of much, but it's just hard to analyze. I mean, I think a lot of people would like to see Hopkins end up on top in this fight, as a nice farewell. But I mean, I think some people think we're just hoping Joe Smith ices him and kind of ends the career.
I hope he does, because I'm sorry, Bernard Hopkins drives me nuts. Do you remember a great Bernard Hopkins fight?
Great Bernard Hopkins fight? No. I mean, I
remember great performances by him.
Right.
Like the Tito Trinidad fight. That was 15 years ago. And back then, everybody thought he was too old.
Yeah, I don't even think he moved up to light heavyweight until he was about 40, if I'm not mistaken. But I don't know. I mean, it's just tough to analyze this fight. I don't even have a call, honestly.
You gotta have a call.
All right. Okay. I'm gonna go safe here, and I'll have Hopkins decision.
Okay. If I had to bet money, I would say Hopkins, just because he's an HBO commentator. He's an Oscar de la Hoya fighter. The only way Joe Smith probably beats him is to knock him out, if you know what I'm saying.
Could be.
I don't know. And I don't know enough about Joe Smith to stick my neck out and just say Joe Smith's going to beat him. All I saw was the Fonfara fight. I really liked Fonfara going into it. And to tell you the truth, I mean, if you put Fonfara in this fight without the Joe Smith fight never happened, I may pick Fonfara to win the fight because I'd seen him more. I mean, Joe Smith, I only saw when he beat Fonfara.
Right, yeah.
So I will go Hopkins by decision also. So you got any more boxing news to bring up tonight?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to mention that Kermit Cintron won his fight.
Oh, yeah, fourth round, wasn't it?
Yeah, the guy quit. He was knocked down with a left hook and ended up quitting. On top of that, a former guest of ours, Jeff Horn, he scored a stoppage in the 6th round. He was actually, I watched the fight earlier today. Tough to get a hold of some of this Australian footage, but he was knocked down once in the 3rd by a vicious headbutt. I mean, it was almost like Ricardo Torres versus Kendall Holt. That's almost how bad it was. But yeah, he ended up rallying. I mean, he won most of the fight, but it seemed like he had a little trouble with the length of Fumica. But I mean, he ended up figuring him out and stopped him in the 6th round. Nice little win for him as well.
All right, so I'll tell any boxers out there, if you go into Grueling Truth, you'll probably win your next fight. That's why Kermit comes on every time, because he just keeps winning. So
right,
it's good luck.
It's like the opposite of the Madden covers. Yeah,
we are the opposite of a curse, whatever that would be. The Grueling Truth would be a blessing if you're on our show.
Come on.
You got anything else tonight, Jeremiah?
Yeah, I did want to mention one more too. There's a nice fight on HBO Latino, and this is one that I'm personally looking for. It's Vyacheslav Shabransky versus Sullivan Barrera, and I know a lot
Sullivan
of people.
Barrera is the one that lost to Andre Ward, right?
Correct, and Shabransky had beat a highly touted Cuban prospect in the past. He's a come forward guy. I mean, he's not raw. He's not like Fonfara. He's got more to his game than that. But I think that's going to be a pretty good light heavyweight scrap.
That's on Friday night?
Yes.
Okay, on HBO Latino. So they don't speak English when you're watching the fight then?
No, unfortunately not, and sometimes I don't mind that. There are a lot of times that I watch the foreign streams because I don't get all of the bias. I mean, listening to HBO sometimes it's fucking corporate marketing at its worst sometimes, even though I do have a little respect for Lampley and Kellerman and Jones Jr.
You do?
I do.
I don't. Maybe Roy Jones, because he'd tell you what he thinks, but I mean, come on. I'm not a big fan of Max Kellerman or Jim Lampley.
Yeah, I see, and especially in, I don't know, I just don't like how often they tout their own men. It's just so obvious.
But they're a hell of a lot better than that Mario Reale or whatever the hell he is on Showtime, who you think he's calling a soccer game when he calls a boxing match.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I've heard him so much when he's calling MMA fights. He's just, I don't know, it sounds a little forced to me. Yeah, but I mean, Showtime has the better analysts. I mean, Al, Bernstein and
yeah. I like Al Bernstein. Mm-hmm. He's good.
Oh, yeah.
He's been doing it forever, so I'd rather listen to Al Bernstein than I would Max Kellerman.
Yep, no, I agree.
But, all right, so we done for this week, or y'all out of stuff to say?
Well, I mean, I could certainly talk all night about this stuff, and I suppose one thing before I finally give it up is the candidates for the International Boxing Hall of Fame were announced. And I thought that was I thought there was some obvious picks that were done. I mean, Evander Holyfield got in, no surprise there. Marco Antonio Barrera got in, no surprise there. Johnny Tapia ended up making it in. I thought he was going to be a shoo-in, not necessarily because of his resume, but because of all he was a really good fighter when he was on, but
and he was extremely popular.
Exactly. I mean, his story, with the documentaries and whatnot, I figured that he was going to get in. He ended up making in, and in the old-timer category, Eddie Booker, one of the former members of the Black Murderers Row, also made it in.
All right. Was there any glaring people left out to you?
Well, in my opinion, I don't think Eddie Booker should have made it in. Not necessarily ever, but I think if somebody should have made it in, the little guys have a tendency to get ignored. And I understand. I mean, we as Americans and most people, we just have an affinity towards big guys. It's just
the little guys, 115, 120 pounds. You ought to be riding a horse.
Yeah, be a jockey. I mean, you make good money doing that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean that's my only disagreement is Eddie Booker. I think Peter Kane should have gotten in, and I know he's not a household name. I know that a lot of people don't know much about him, but he's oftentimes rated as a top 10 flyweight, and from my understanding, he's about the only guy generally rated in the top 10 who has been passed over for the Hall of Fame. So I just think he's a little bit more worthy. He was an excellent fighter from the UK.
Well, Eddie Booker's a guy, if I remember right, I mean, he beat Holman Williams, he beat Archie Moore, beat Lloyd Marshall. I mean, he got a pretty good resume.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It's just, in terms of where they place in their respective divisions, I think, Kane was just rates a little bit higher. But no doubt Eddie Booker was a damn good fighter.
All right. Anybody else left out you thought should have been in, or vice versa?
No, I think it was pretty solid. I mean, it's hard with the voting anymore because of the way modern boxing is. I mean, you look at all these resumes, and they're like, oh, they're a 105-pound WBO champion.
Yeah.
And, people make a bunch about the defenses and yada, yada, yada.
Or you look at a guy's record from back then, like an Eddie Booker. I think he was something like, maybe 60-9 or something, 60-8, 56-8, something around there.
Yeah, I think.
If you look at it now, 60. Nobody has 8 losses if they're any good because they don't fight 8 guys that could beat them.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you're typically a journeyman anymore if you have that many losses.
I mean, also, I think Booker, everybody I mentioned to you that he beat, he fought multiple times too.
Yeah, I mean, I know he fought Williams a number of times. I know
more, at least twice.
Yes, at least twice. And then he got a draw and ended up stopping him. He fought Lloyd Marshall, who was a damn good fighter. I mean, even contenders. This was a guy who was fighting good people fairly consistently. I mean, I know he fought Coco Kid, Fritzy Zivik, a good number of fighters. But today we just don't get that. So it's hard to gauge.
Yeah, but Jake LaMotta's in the Hall of Fame, and I think Eddie Booker would have kicked his ass.
Then that's maybe possible, but to Jake LaMotta's credit, he fought a lot of he fought a lot of the opposite race when a lot of when another number of guys either didn't want to, preferred not to, or just couldn't because of the World War II. I mean, World War II cut into a lot of this black on white stuff.
Plus the Raging Bull movie, and Robert De Niro didn't hurt him.
Yeah.
Was he elected to the Hall of Fame before that or after that movie?
I'm not sure, honestly.
I'm not either. That's why I ask.
Yeah, no, I'm not sure, but yeah, I mean, just with all the modern stuff, it's tough to gauge how good these guys are. I mean, I don't know. I look at, they're like, oh, he was a 2-division champion, and he held some fringe alphabet organization belt, and he defended it so many times. I mean, I don't know. Part of me thinks it's ridiculousness, and I don't really weigh too heavily on all these exaggerated. The modern era just exaggerates your stats.
You kind of say the same thing for before 1942 with all the no contest and newspaper decisions, stuff like that too.
Well, I mean, you could say that, but when I see Harry Greb fighting, Mike Gibbons, Tommy Gibbons, when I see him fighting 15 Hall of Famers, and a total of them, he fought all these Hall of Famers more than 30 times, it's a bit easier to make a judgment. I mean, it's not like, I don't know. I mean, they had a lot of newspapermen, writing their own stories about who won and whatnot. But the thing about the old era is at least I see that they were fighting these people. With the modern era, and I think I'm going to write an article on this, is just how, the 17 weight classes kind of give safe haven to some of these guys. I mean, look at guys like Sven Odke and Arthur Abraham who get to kind of hang out at 168, holding a title like the WBO and just making numerous defenses. And people, they're like, oh, well, he had this title and he made so many defenses. It's not like the UFC where you have 8 divisions, so it's streamlined and the best have to fight the best. It's just, I don't know. I just think all these stats are exaggerated.
Well, yeah, Sven Odke was definitely pushing it. Jake LaMotta was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 1990.
Damn, that's pretty late.
So that's 10 years after the movie.
Yeah, that's pretty damn late. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I finished his book a while back. I think he attributed to, I don't know, I think he attributed some of that to his bad guy reputation, if I'm not mistaken, because a lot of people preferred Graziano was much more popular, and LaMotta, after a couple of, not only because of his background, because of what he got tried for in Florida, he just had a worse reputation and wasn't in the public eye.
Yeah, LaMotta, I think, has a lot better resume than Graziano.
Oh, far better. I mean, Graziano beat up a bunch of welterweights.
And, I mean, Robinson only knocked him out the one time. I mean, and Graziano got destroyed by Robinson in 3 rounds, if I remember correctly.
Oh, yeah. Robinson beat the shit out of Graziano. I mean, Graziano was never on that level. I mean, I think he was moved a bit carefully. I mean, again, he beat up a lot of welterweight contenders, which is all good and well, but, for a middleweight. But, I mean, LaMotta had a far better record. I mean, he was beating all sorts of guys, took on all sorts of fights, and not only did he beat Robinson, but he had him, there were other couple close contests as well. It's not as if he beat Robinson once and then, the rest were clear-cut decisions for Robinson. I mean, a number of them were also very close. Yeah.
Well, he was in every fight. But even if it was an 8-2 fight or a 9-1 fight, every one of the rounds was competitive.
Yep. No, LaMotta was an excellent fighter.
At least that's what I read about, because, of course, only the last fight, I think, exists on video, doesn't it?
His last fight?
His last fight with Robinson's the only one of the 6 that really exists, isn't it?
I believe it is. I mean, I haven't seen any footage to the contrary, but I may be mistaken. Sometimes you can find some of these footages on some of the. Sometimes you can find some lower. Sometimes you can find fight footage on some of the archived websites, and so I've seen a number of Robinson's fights, but I don't believe some Robinson's fights that aren't on YouTube. But I don't recall ever seeing any of the LaMotta fights.
Yeah. All righty. So I guess we are done for the week. Next week we'll come back. We'll review these, and I believe we'll have Harold Brazier on next week. And then I believe the week after that we will have our year-end boxing awards. We'll call them the Preissers. What do you think?
Let's call it. Hey, it sounds good to me.
Maybe we'll call them the Preissers, just in honor of the first 6 shows when I kept screwing your name up.
You know, whatever you want to do, man. Either way, if I can get my name on this imaginary award, I'll be happy.
All righty. Well, you got any final words?
Nope, no final words.
All right, guys. Make sure you check out all of our shows, read all of our articles on thegruelingtruth.net. You can catch our shows on iHeart, iTunes, Google Music, Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn. Anywhere you find sports podcasts, you'll find The Grueling Truth. Check out our main sponsor, GridRMO, at www.gridrmo.com. We've got a special NFL Legends show coming up on Friday where my guest will be former New York Giant great linebacker Carl Banks, who's Super Bowl 21, played one of the greatest Super Bowls that's ever been played by a linebacker. He had 14 tackles, 10 unassisted solo tackles, and he was on the same field with Lawrence Taylor and them, and during that game, John Madden basically just said, today Carl Banks is the best player on this field. So Carl Banks will be with us, also a member of the 87 and 88 Pro Bowl teams, so make sure you check out the Carl Banks interview Friday afternoon. So for Jeremiah Preisser, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.